Just like that, another Formula 1 season has come and gone. It doesn't seem too long ago that we were watching the first race back in Bahrain, but what a year it has been for Max Verstappen, in a year where he has completely dominated all year long and completely crushed the opposition, winning his third World Championship in a row, in a year in which he has won so many races, broken so many records, and cemented his place surely among the greatest drivers of all time. Max's consistent ability to perform week in, week out has got to be one of the most impressive things about his 2023 season, because he's never really taken his foot off the gas. He has been completely flawless, and while it may not have been a classic season, of course you want to see a title baton to go down to the wire. It has been a pleasure to watch Max's season unfold in the way it did, and will surely go down as one of the greatest seasons by any driver in F1 history. We've seen drivers dominate in the past, but I don't think we've seen domination to this extent in the way that Max has performed this year, because it's not just the fact that he won the World Championship and he won it comfortably, it's also the amount of records that he broke during the year as well. Just looking through some of the records that Max has broke this year, it is amazing what he's managed to achieve in 2023, winning the most races over an entire season. Of course, that was the record that he broke last year when he won 15 of the 22 races in 2022. This year he upped that tally to 19. On top of that, he also eclipsed his own record for the most podiums over a season. He only finished off the podium once this year, which of course was in Singapore. He also broke Sebastian Vettel's record for the most laps led over a season, but he didn't just beat this, he completely smashed it, because he became the first driver in F1 history to lead more than 1,000 laps over an entire year. He also set a new record for the most hat-tricks over a season. Now, for those who don't know, a hat-trick is the win, the fastest lap and the pole position all rolled into one, and over the course of the year Max managed to do this on 6 occasions. Max also set a record for the most wins from pole position during a season. He managed to score 12 pole positions, and all of them he managed to convert into a victory. He also broke one of his own records, which was for the most points scored over a season. Last year he scored 452 points. This year he managed to up that tally to 575, which, considering there was only 620 points available over the entire season, is simply incredible. And just to mention another record, Max managed to set a new benchmark in terms of the points gap to second place in the World Championship. He finished 290 points ahead of his Red Bull teammate Sergio Perez, which, considering the previous record was held by Sebastian Vettel, who finished 155 points ahead of Fernando Alonso in 2013. It just goes to show just how dominant Max has been this year, and he really was in a league of his own. Just to put Max's domination into perspective, he could have chosen not to race the final 10 races after the summer break, and Max would have still had enough points to win the World Championship. And on top of that, Max also had enough points to win the Constructors' Championship all on his own if he was a constructor himself. You also have to look at the way that Max completely dominated Perez over the season head-to-head, because at times it was humiliating. It was a crushing display of dominance. That despite Perez's decent start to the season, of course, he won 2 of the first 4 races, but from Miami onwards, Max just refused to let him have any sniff of a chance of a victory again. He just destroyed him. Max was also the only driver on the grid to complete every single racing lap this season, and on top of that, he did not finish outside of the top 5 all year long, which of course means he scored points in every race, and this means he became only the 3rd driver in history to do such a thing, after Michael Schumacher achieved it in 2002 and Lewis Hamilton did it twice in both 2017 and 2019. So that's just a summary of Max's brilliance this season, but now I want to get into the topic for this video, which is Max Verstappen's 2023 season the single greatest individual season put together by any driver in Formula 1 history, or is there another one out there that is actually better? Now I'm going to run through a few examples of which seasons I think, in my opinion, deserve to be mentioned among the greatest individual seasons put together by a driver in F1 history. But what I've also decided to do is restrict a season to each driver. So for example, you could say that a certain driver deserves multiple mentions for having a season which deserves to be mentioned among the greatest individual seasons of all time, but I've decided that I'm only going to choose one of their seasons which I think is their best. So the ones that I'm going to run through, the reason they've qualified as one of the greatest individual seasons of all time in my opinion are down to a number of factors that include the level of domination, all of the performance aspects, the stats, the records broken, and the performance relative to their teammates. The first one I'm going to pick is Alberto Ascari's 1952 season, which is probably the real first example of when a driver truly dominated in Formula 1. Ascari swept to the first of his 2 World Championships in dominating fashion, winning 6 of the 8 races that were contested that year. The only ones that he didn't take part in were the Indy 500, and he retired from the Swiss Grand Prix. Other than that, he won the other 6, which were all in succession. He also took 3 pole positions during the year and 6 fastest laps, winning the championship by 12 points from Giuseppe Farina. My next pick is Juan Manuel Fangio's 1954 season, which was the second of the 5 World Championships he would go on to win, and this was, in my opinion, the best of the 5 World Championships that he won in terms of the level of consistency. He finished in the points at all of the races that he contested, winning 6 out of the 9 races, and started from pole position 5 times, and he'd go on to win the championship pretty convincingly by 17 points. My third pick is going to be Jim Clark's 1963 season, which was the first of the 2 World Championships that he won during his career. But for me, this one stands out more than 1965, which was the year that he won his second World Championship, because of the level of consistency and domination that he had during 1963. He won 7 of the 10 Grand Prix that year, also taking 7 pole positions and 6 fastest laps, and in the end he won the World Championship by a massive 25 points over Graham Hill. But what was arguably the most impressive thing about Clark's 1963 season was the fact that he scored all but one of Lotus's points during that season. Up next is Nigel Mansell's 1992 season, which was the year, of course, that he finally won his first and what would prove to be his only Formula 1 World Championship, in a year in which he dominated the season in the incredible FW14B. After all the years of finishing behind his rivals in the World Championship, Mansell finally got his big break and completely crushed the opposition in 1992. He won 9 of the 16 races that year. He also started from pole position an incredible 14 times, which was a record held until 2011. He also took a fastest lap in half of those 16 Grand Prix and completely dominated his teammate Riccardo Patrese, winning the championship over Patrese by an amazing 52 points. Next is Michael Schumacher's amazing 2002 season, when he won the 5th of his 7 Formula 1 World Championships in a year he completely dominated. He won 11 of the 17 races, starting from pole position 7 times, also taking 7 fastest laps. He ended up winning the World Championship by a total of 67 points over his Ferrari teammate Rubens Barrichello, which at the time was a record. But his level of domination goes beyond that, because he managed to wrap up the World Championship in July with 6 races to go, which at the time again was a record. And he also managed to finish on the podium at all of the 17 races, which to this day is still a record that is yet to be matched. Now we're going to move on to Sebastian Vettel's 2013 season, which of course was the year he'd win what proved to be his 4th and final World Championship, in a year in which he rewrote the record books and arguably dominated like nobody had before him. Vettel won 13 of the 19 races during that season, which at the time equalled the record for the most wins during a season, which was held by Michael Schumacher from 2004. He also managed to put a run together of 9 consecutive wins, which up until this year was also a new record. Seb also took 9 pole positions during the year and ended up winning the World Championship by a massive 155 points over Ferrari's Fernando Alonso, which again up until this year was a record. My final pick is going to be Lewis Hamilton's 2020 season, which for me just eclipses his 2017, 18 and 19 seasons in terms of the level of domination and his level of execution. He managed to win 11 of the 17 races during what was of course a season that was impacted by COVID. He scored 10 pole positions over the course of the year in that amazing W11, which has got to go down as one of the greatest cars ever designed. I mean, at times, particularly in Hamilton's hands, the car looked like it was on rails. He also scored 6 fastest laps and ended up winning the World Championship over his Mercedes teammate Valtteri Bottas by 124 points, which is pretty amazing considering that there was only 17 races and that he ended up missing the second race in Bahrain because he contracted COVID. So that was my run through of what I consider to be some of the greatest individual seasons put together by any driver in F1 history, and that of course leads us on to the big question, and that is Max's 2023 season better than all of the ones that I've picked? And ultimately, is it the greatest individual season of all time? All of them deserve their praise because they are incredible seasons put together by some incredible drivers. But I do think that Max's 2023 season does come out on top as the single greatest individual season by any driver in F1 history, simply for the level of domination and for the consistent execution that Max managed at every single race during 2023. His only real blip was Singapore when he finished in 5th place, but that was arguably him overdriving the car and dragging a result that the car did not deserve. It's also because of the amount of records that he's managed to break this season. I mean, some of these records are probably never going to be broken again. I mean, I can't see anybody coming along in the near future and surpassing his record for the most wins and most podiums during a season. It's very likely that now we're in the cost cap era that it will be even more difficult for a team to dominate like Red Bull has this year. So it's very likely that we'll never see a season like this ever again. So what do you reckon? Do you think that Max Verstappen's 2023 season is the greatest individual season by any driver in F1 history? Or do you think that actually there is another season that eclipses it? Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments section. And if you're new around here, don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.